Hi, Glenn Lurley, 725 North First Street in town. President Ramba. I wanted to give a little update. Shenanigans went live today, so we're accepting registration, and the campground should be starting to fill up. We're going to have most of the trails in Ramboland are groomed up as of today. Yeah, about 20 miles. We didn't do everything. It was a little tough out there. Well, I'll be coming to you guys for approval of some projects that we're going to be doing this summer, starting in spring. Hopefully a beginner trail from the Hob and some more advanced trails up at Alqual. More on that to come. But, thank you, Secretary. Good thing. We've got an open meeting at UP Brewing in Nagani on April 21st at 6:30. Yeah, all are welcome if y'all. What's the date for that? 21st, Monday. Yeah, any questions on anything? Council have questions? Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't. Yeah, just want to say thanks. Ramba has been working to help make our campground very successful this year. They started that race to help us gain some momentum, and I just wanted to make sure council knew, like, all the help that this organization has offered our community. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Amy.
So sorry. Amy Lurley, 725 North First Street. I'm also with Ramba. I'm secretary of the board, and as an organization, we volunteered to work with the city on behalf of the Brasswire Campground in submitting an application for a solar array to be placed at the Brasswire. And we don't have word yet, but I do have an alert on my phone, and you'll be the first to know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on. Items of business, we have a pack of resolutions. Bill, can you explain what decertifying a road means, please?
Recertifying means that we no longer maintain it. We don't get funding for the caretaking of the road. And these roads that are on that list are, they're not actually roads, they're private driveways that somehow got on our list. One is the entrance to Lindbergh's yard off of Excelsior. The other, if you remember the house that was up on the sand hill on 41, that is now a sand pit. It's just cleaning up a few things. That's why we didn't vacate them, because they're not our property.
And if we could, from now on, let's do a map for council.
Okay. Yep.
Certifies, and we figured them all out, but, so, I would be willing to take a motion to do all five at one time, because they're all back to the state. I'll make that motion, do all five in one shot here. Your support. Motion and support to adopt resolution.
I have a question. On these, all of these are, none of these are operated, used by the public at all, correct?
No.
Okay, all right, no questions.
They may be used by the public, but they're not required for us to maintain them.
Okay.
The public uses them, it's at their own risk.
Incinerator Drive. Which one is North Road anyway?
The one to the old sewer.
It actually goes through the campground. And we don't do anything with that.
We don't own that property no more either.
Gotcha, that makes sense. That's what I was curious. I didn't
All
know
right,
which
I have
one
a
north
motion
was.
and support to adopt resolution 1025, 1125, 12, 2025, 13, 2025, 14, 2025. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Well, we need to talk about design options for Third Street. Again, it's gonna be a lot of information from our friend Chris, and I don't think we want to take action tonight. I think there's gonna be a lot of information in our regular meeting going a couple weeks away. So it's a good opportunity. You've got, one pack of some drawings and one pack of some costs. Did you, where'd Chris go there? Put it behind that camera.
This on? Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so I sent you guys yesterday, and I apologize. I have Jake Vandermate here. He's one of my colleagues out of the Ishpeming office, so you'll probably see more of Jake as these projects go on. Jake put these together for us. I guess we drove it today with Bill and Randy, looked at many different things out there, and I guess I would encourage the council to go in the next 2 weeks before your next meeting and look at the same stuff that we're looking at. Our recommendation right now would be to narrow it, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, down to north. And then from there, it would stay the same, basically. What you're gonna see when you get out there, though, is there's some issues with sidewalk/curb, or what I mean is you have no curb. It's sidewalk as your curb. So that's gonna be a difficult part, and I think what we're gonna end up having to do is just repave to that. We could replace it, but as you see, with what we gave you, some of these numbers are not small numbers. And so, as you wrestle with where do we get these funds, what do we do with this, there's a lot of things that you gotta consider. I don't see, unfortunately, one way, maybe it's not unfortunately, I don't see how we don't do down to Michigan. That's where we're gonna cross over off of Third. We're gonna actually go down Michigan on a few streets with water, so there's storm in there. So I think that portion has to be done. How we come up with funding on that, I've talked to Grant on some ideas, and he's working on some stuff, so that's a conversation, but I think at a minimum, we have to go down to Third Street, down to Michigan, and that's where we'll reroute then. It comes right now down to Empire on Third. We don't need to go to Empire because it goes Empire over to Second, back up, so it makes a loop, so we're gonna cut out that loop. And then we would cut out that storm also when we dig, we'll take the storm out because there's no reason to have that storm in that block from Michigan to Empire. It'd just be regular ground back in there then. So what we tried to do is present to you two different things. So we have a total cost and a water project cost. And what that does is it shows you what our estimate is, necking down, like I said, to north. And that would leave you with green space on both sides. We'd have new curb. There's many options. So what that helps you do is, in the blocks that are, say, south of Michigan, is you could just do the curb and say, we don't have enough money to do sidewalk. We'll come back later and do sidewalk. That's fine because we've got the curb and we established the road back where we need to be. So that buys you some time. Now, it's an option, but we all know what happens. If you don't do it, when are you gonna do it next, right? So it's kind of one of those things where I don't know that I would recommend that, but it is an option. And as you try and find funds, that's where you're gonna have to decide what can we afford, what can't we afford. So what we did is we broke out total project, and then underneath it, we put the water project. So what that means is the stuff in the water project is stuff that's already included in the water project. So that's covered under the water project. And then we subtracted the two so that you could see in the third column, we have what we're calling a city cost, right? So that's gonna be your storm, and that's gonna be maybe some curb that would be in there, some sidewalks that aren't necessarily covered under what we already have in the water project.
But that doesn't cover all of the sidewalk, correct?
It would cover all the sidewalk, yeah.
No, all of it, okay.
Yep. I think, you have sidewalk all the way down? Yes. Yeah, so it would cover all the way down.
Because I understand that the bottom line here is all inclusive.
Correct.
That's what we do everything.
Correct. That is correct. And that's what we wanted to give you is, I guess, a worst case scenario, and then you can work backwards from there, right? What can we afford? What do we want to do? Do we want to target certain blocks? How do we want to do this to make sure that, you guys are using the money to the best of your ability?
But
Question, you talk about green space. Are you talking about the street green space sidewalk?
Correct.
Okay, if it didn't do that, because somebody's got to cut that grass, got to maintain it, you throw salt on it, the grass dies, you got to replant the grass every year. Have you thought about doing like a bike path there instead of a green space? The road would come all the way to the sidewalk. That space that would normally be green space, have a bike path.
You could do that.
Bike lane.
You could do that.
He's not gonna decide that, you are.
Okay.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
not
so what
Okay.
we've done is, we've done what we've been asked to do, I guess. Let me preface that. But what you're gonna run into is part of the reason that we're necking this down is for plowing purposes. So if you go back to a bike lane or a bike path, you're right back into where we are right now, right? So now you're gonna have costs with plowing. So I look at it as, those are some of the costs that you're not gonna see on this piece of paper. But if your guys only have to drive up and down once instead of twice now, you're saving on your DPW hours as well, right? And you're saving on wear and tear on vehicles, all that stuff, which you're not gonna see in these numbers, but you're gonna realize it at some point to your bottom line.
Bill, you
You're also going to run into the issue of when you go out and walk it, please look at the curb on one side, or please look at the height of the sidewalk on one side and look at the lack of it on the other side. When we go through there, we have to find a way to adjust the road. And the only way that we can see it is to have that 4-foot buffer where you can go like this with that green grass versus a bike path or a road or whatever. It's,
We'll be doing a site visit with council. There's no, with our new big ones and our
I
priority,
agree.
there's no way to get around it than us, manager, Bill, Grant, whoever we need to go up there. We'll all go up there, we'll start at the arch or whatever, and we'll look it all over.
I agree.
If the storms
Thank you,
are-
Your Honor.
Any other questions?
One other thing, and maybe I'm premature and Bill might beat me up afterwards, but at the intersection of Hematite there, we've had conversations about trying to, I'll say, fix that intersection, right? Because when you pull up, you're at an angle, it's hard to see, right? So we'd like to make that more of a 90, kind of like what we did up at Prairie. We're not sure yet on what that design looks like. We're kind of throwing some ideas around right now, but that's something that we'd also like to take care of because we are coming all the way just past Hematite with the water project. So now is the time to fix that too, if we can. So that's something that Bill and I have been talking about, and we'll probably have more information to come later. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that's in the works to try and do something there to make it more of a, I'll call it a proper intersection that will hopefully help with some of your sight and things like that and avoid some accidents
Your
there.
Honor, can I ask a question? And I did speak to Bill, but any plans for that? That won't take away too much. I know it's not owned by Bethel Lutheran Church, but it's still part of the grounds for the church right now, and there is an entrance there, and I know you and I talked about it. But
Yeah, I don't
I just
think
want
we're-
to correctly make sure that.
We're not looking to come into that entrance, I don't think at all. And when we looked at the plans briefly, we'd be a little bit north of that entrance so that we can maintain that.
Okay.
But again, we're just in the infancy and we're trying to figure out
Right.
where
And-
can we do this? How can we make this work to make that intersection
Yeah,
better?
And if anything changes, one of you can just. if
Yeah,
one
we'll
of
give you
would
guys some
update me.
plans before we did anything there. We
Yeah.
would never say, go do this to the contractor. We'd float you some ideas and say, here's one idea, here's another. What do you
Yeah.
guys think? And ultimately, you represent the city, so it's your city. I just do
Yeah.
what you guys want me
And
to
I
do.
just have to update the council,
Yeah.
church council on that.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Perfect.
Is the gentleman you introduced us tonight gonna be the guy to make sure there's no faux pas?
Jake will probably be with Lindbergh actually on contract 1, and then we have another guy, Hayden Mann, that's going to be with Payne and Dolan on contract 2. We'll probably have a third guy actually floating between the two projects, so we're not sure who that'll be yet, but that's who
Don't
that.
have to go home with them at night, but everything else.
Yeah, no, Jake lives actually just 2 blocks over here, so he's an Ishpeming resident, so yeah, he doesn't have far to
Oh, and
go,
the
so.
church does support the project.
Any other questions?
If it's necessary.
All right, digest this information best you can, and we will be talking about a field trip here shortly.
If there's questions in the meantime, you guys know how to get a hold of me, or Kathy does, Bill does, funnel them through that way, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have before the next meeting so that you have as much info as you can.
Did you guys do any artist type with the right away, the grass possibility or?
No, we haven't yet. We could show you something like that. Yeah, we could just show you like a cross section or something, then what that would look like. Or even, I think on the drawings, we kind of show it necked in, but it's hard to see because of the scale on them. So we could try and blow up like a half a block or something and say, here's what this might look like so that you guys can have an idea.
That would be good.
Yeah, we can do that. I'll get that over to Bill and Kathy and Randy, and they can forward it on to you guys.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Better head home if we don't put out. All right, now, night meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission. Who do we have for Parks? Claudia? And who's the gentleman in the back?
Craig.
Hey, Greg.
Craig.
Craig.
Yep. And I'm the liaison.
All right. Randy, you want to lead us off? Or what? Yeah. Are you gonna present to us first, guys? Is that fit better for you?
So we need to talk about what
Get her off.
Freddie is our co-chair.
Oh, okay.
Can we get them a mic?
Getting you, Mike, Craig.
We have a forum, Jason is.
Yeah, I'm here.
And then will that
Where do you
one
want me to?
reach?
Sorry.
If you want to do a roll call, that's it. I have, okay.
You have,
Awesome.
You want to talk about the Brassware campground?
one of the things, let me preface for you guys is, first, thank you for coming, taking the time. One of the things that I've noticed in all the years is we didn't do a lot with our committees.
No.
You know, and that's bad on us. The committee is supposed to be the driving force that makes the recommendation. The council, that this is the right thing to do. And it's sad that we haven't used these people. You wouldn't be on these committees if your heart wasn't in what you're doing, because nobody gives up that much time for something that they don't believe in. So thank you very much for participating and coming tonight, especially with the weather. I guess we'll let you guys determine how you want to talk, and we'll take all the information, and if possible, we'll have a little two-way dialogue, and if not, we'll get answers back to you.
Okay.
Well, I'm newer to the committee, so Claudia and Kevin would have more information than I would.
And that, you can be informal, Greg. It's
Okay, so if Claudia would like to start?
Sure.
Well, you have the budget on here first, and how did our campground do? Grant would know that.
How did our campground do? It did okay. There we are. We aren't hemorrhaging money right now. We're breaking
Okay.
even.
Okay,
So that's good news. It means we have time to figure things out. We are pausing on our repayment to the water and sewer funds because we're not generating enough to make those debt service payments yet.
okay,
So what I would say for the campground, like I said, is as it's covering its own basis, we have time to figure out marketing strategies. We have time to let it gain traction naturally, which I think it is doing. With where it races like the 24-hour race there and just other things. We have time to watch it build. So it's good news. It's not an emergency situation where we need to start paying the water and sewer funds back.
Okay.
The water and sewer funds are doing just fine without that money. It is still a balance that is owed to those funds on the books, but to me, from a financial perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense to wait and see how that campground is going to perform. And then the other thing that's relevant is we have a debt elimination plan for the brass wire because of the startup and construction costs. And that debt elimination plan, which we have submitted to the state, says that in a couple, I think it's 4 years now, that we will transfer in either money from the general fund or public improvement fund or something just to make it whole. In other words, if it doesn't stand on its own 2 feet in a couple years, then we'll be transferring that money in. But we do have some time to try and figure out if we can start making those debt service payments for
I
that.
think if we get the grant for the solar panels, I think that'll be a big help.
I agree. Bill has worked on some highway signage and some MDOT signage that'll go in, which will point people to that campground.
Yep.
And then,
Councilman Kipling also.
Councilman
got the
Kipling,
signs on the
exactly.
28 brown ones, and no cost, so that's even better.
Thank you,
Good.
Pat, for pointing that out, yes.
Good.
Yeah,
We also have an option, the gal on the corner of Mountain Road and 28, the house on the hill. If we want to use that hill there, which is their land, and put a billboard or something, or, you know, something bigger that if you guys want to, that land is available to you.
yeah. When we looked at last year, our big events, without doing much coordination with the Order Shore or anything, but you could watch a cycling event come into town and you could watch reservations go through the roof. So like
Okay.
we made our money off Order Shore, Margie, and the 24 hours.
So you don't think we have to do any real advertising?
I do think we should do advertising, but let me preface, my original assessment was against the background of the relative panic that we were all feeling about the campground maybe like 7 months ago around that time. Just kind of pointing out, like, we should be advertising, we should still be marching forward with anything we can do to bring attention to the campground, but it's not something we need to feel panicked about necessarily. We're covering our ground.
Would the Lake Superior partnership, the city has a contract with them, would they be able to do advertising for us?
I believe
In that contract?
developing some advertising is a line item that I specifically named in that plan for them for this year, so they should have that as part of their contract scope already baked in. Yeah. So they hopefully will be able to come up with something for us before the summer gets into
How
too soon.
much have we shifted responsibility from us toward the committee?
I would say I am waiting for committee recommendations on advertising is, I thought, where we kind of left it. I have LSCP, and I apologize if that's wrong, just where I thought we left it. I have LSCP in the waiting to do advertising. And then as far as actual handling of the campground, we're handling the reservation software and stuff, but any sort of direction other than the grant, which we applied for, I'm kind of waiting for Parks and Rec to make recommendations. I don't know if that was an official council motion. It's what I remember from the discussions that we had at the council level.
Maybe it was, but there wasn't a real particular
Right.
assignment, except that the city manager shouldn't be running the campground. I guess was to sum it up, and it seems that we've shifted the appropriate amount of responsibility to the committee. And I think we're doing well with the response that comes back, whether it's a recommendation or a request. I think so. I think we're doing pretty good
Yeah,
between the management, the council, and the committee.
yeah. I think this campground is an asset that, I mean, we're going to be appreciating it in decades, not in years. So the expectation that was set in prior administration that this was going to come in and it was going to be an enterprise fund that was going to be a cash cow for the city was wrong. No, it is a great natural resource that the city has. It's green space. We spend $200,000 without blinking an eye to maintain Alqual every year, and it brings us not very much money. This campground is at least covering its own service space, which is great. And it's another park, it's another green space. I think when we talk about it, when we look at it, it's as much a public service as it is a business that we're running. So it's a good thing for us to have. And I think it adds nicely to the city's brand and what we can offer residents and visitors.
Agreed, Jason?
And I think one of the things that turning some of this control over to the Parks and Rec Committee will allow them to look into the future and what's put out there, or what type of improvements or upgrades are made out there as a group, and without any one person kind of reporting back. I think the group has done a really, really, really good job using its strengths and the individuals on it from even in just the short time I've been the liaison there. And I think it would be in really, really good hands if the Parks and Rec had a really, really strong hand in really developing that campground as a unit.
Well, I will make a recommendation that we have I don't know who it would be, contact the Lake Superior Partnership. We'll make a recommendation to the council to contact them to do some advertising for us.
Well, I believe Grant is kind of on that already. Maybe we can get them to come to a Parks Committee meeting and have a little dialogue.
I think that's actually a great idea. So they, like I said, I tapped them in and asked if that was something we could add to the contract already to kind of tee you guys up. So I think
Okay.
maybe the next step, and maybe something I lost in the transitionary period here, so I apologize, is we just got to invite Chris into a Parks and Rec meeting
They
and you
did,
guys.
yeah, they did have representation at our last meeting. Rachel was there from the LSCP. She actually didn't know we were talking about the campground at the time, but they're trying to get more involved in all of our committees, and so she showed up and was interested to hear what we had to talk about and learn more about Alqual and the tube slide updates and things like that at the time. That was back in February.
2 meetings ago, correct?
Yeah, 2 meetings
I
ago.
wasn't
I
at
guess
that
if
one,
we
yeah.
just reinforce the advertising part of it, we'll get together,
Absolutely.
that
It
would be
sounds
good.
like we're a phone call away from,
as we should be.
Did you want me to talk about this, or the project?
yeah.
Claudia, do you want me?
I think
Which
so.
project is it, Ken?
So I guess it's the marketing plan actually for the campground.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess for a little background for Randy and any of the new council members, it was probably about last July, I think, or June, there was a city council meeting, and some of the council members were talking about, the state of the campground and should we sell it and should we get rid of it? And I actually happened to be watching on my phone, live, and showed up for public comment and said, hey, well, hold on, like the Parks and Rec Commission hasn't even been talking about the campground and marketing and things like that. And you guys, as a council, are making decisions without recommendations from the committee. So I do appreciate Mayor Scanlon's comments about wanting to get the committees more involved. And I do feel like our committee, I've been on it for a little over 2 years now, and I feel like in the last 6 months, we've made more decisions, or I felt like we've made a bigger impact than I did when I first started 2 years ago. So I do appreciate the council and taking the time to listen to the committees, because otherwise we were just meeting, every other month for, it felt like no reason. And we talk about stuff, but it wasn't like we were making recommendations.
Needs to go towards Grant too, because, he definitely changed how the committees were included in the discussion, and that's a really big thank you to you, because that's when I think the communication really started improving.
I was happy to let go and so thank them.
So thanks again,
honestly,
Grant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's let Kevin go ahead.
Yeah, so, I kind of basically, my comment was, hey, this thing, I talked to Grant, I was like, this thing hasn't even been open for a year and people are already, panicking about it not making money and that we're losing money for the city. So last fall, I'm going for my MBA at Northern, outside of my work, and I got a group of Heather Hopp, Nathan Mann, and myself to come up with a marketing plan for the campground. And I really want to thank Grant for being very transparent with all the numbers and any of the data on the usage of the campground. And so I do have a whole PowerPoint too I can send the council. And then Kathy, I don't know, have you sent this to the council or have they seen the marketing plan yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we can, if you want to send that around to them. But I basically presented this 2 meetings ago at the Parks and Rec Commission, so Kurt and Jason were both there to hear some of that as well. So I guess just kind of walking through it, the good news, so it hadn't been open a whole year, but just in the last summer, the good news, as Grant mentioned, was that the campground didn't lose any money. It actually made money. And as Grant alluded to, it didn't make a ton of money. But it did make, close to $6,000. Revenue was about $15,000 and expenses were a little over $9,500.
I got a question. Was that it? But that was not making the debt payment, correct?
That was with a pause in debt.
Okay,
Yeah.
payments.
all right, thanks.
Yep, good question.
Yeah, so I guess that was one kind of concern that a lot of, even other residents brought up, was they were worried about the costs and expenses to maintain the campground. So Grant was, thankfully shared a lot of that data with us. There's also a lot of just community reactions online and social media that you'll see in the report that we put out there, both positive and negative. So we wanted to highlight both of those and kept everyone anonymous. There was concerns over, someone thought it was a failure from the beginning. They said it would have been better off buying lottery tickets. I thought that was kind of comical. But then also, someone else said, it was a wonderful addition to the community. Someone talked about like the historic significance of that area in Union Park and the brass wire ski jumps being beneficial to the city. Some other concerns were about, they wish that some trees would have been left up. And thankfully, the city actually replied and said, this was a dead forest and it was a fire hazard. And I think by being transparent and telling people like, hey, this is why it's, there's not a lot of shade and trees right now is because it was a fire hazard and they had to get rid of the trees. And that's why it made a good campground space-wise and flatness-wise was because of that. So I think, Bill mentioned there's possibility of adding trees in the future, which will, take time to mature. So either doing that or providing shelters, like pre-built shelters at some of the sites might help with the shade concerns. But the biggest thing that we did in our project was we didn't want it to cost the city any more money, since it seemed like there were a lot of concerns from citizens on investing any more money into the city. So we were trying to find cost-effective things that we could do now to promote the campground, but also make improvements that would make more people want to stay at the campground. Realizing that it's a rustic site and it's not, meant to be, a fancy campground that people are sometimes looking for. People know when they come there that it's a car camping, maybe you could bring your camper, but there's not going to be hookups. So just being very transparent on the website, like, hey, there's no water, electrical hookups. But we did have the recommendation of the solar panels and having some electrical available. So great work on already implementing that. Another thing we talked about was the signage on 41 and 28. So another good job on implementing that right away and getting on that so there's more visibility in the public. We did compare it, so you'll see in here, we did compare the pricing to both private and public campgrounds and city campgrounds. So we compared Van Riper as a state park. We compared those other ones, Marquette City Campground, Rippling River, and then the campground here in Ishpeming as well. And our prices definitely compared to others that had rustic sites. Obviously, we didn't have as many amenities. So I think that would be a long-term goal or recommendation was, having a shower house or like not even a big shower house, just a few showers available, especially when you think about bikers or biking community, after they're biking and sweaty all day, and then they're going to go in their tent, having a shower available would be nice. Although, Kurt, you brought up that there's showers available at, was it the other campground?
I went to a rustic campground where they had free showers, and they had a button that spun. It was all cold water right through the well. But when you want a hot shower, go to the Vermont Inn. If you want a cold shower, like at a rustic campground, the expectation isn't much. They want something wet, get clean,
Right.
And I survived it. It was just fine.
Yeah.
One thing I thought of was also adding a station for like bike repair or cleaning bikes out there would be a really nice addition, for those that are coming here for bike races,
Right.
would be to have a nice station set up for them, so.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and just even highlighting so much of the trails in Ramba as well. Partnering with them is also, as Grant mentioned, those are where a lot of the campground's filling up. So anytime we can do events, partnering with local organizations to host events out there is truly beneficial. The other downside was, not really having anything for kids outside of, using the Ramba trails or other trails in the area. There's nothing like on site where if you're at your campground, like, hey, kids, go to the playground, or like some of the other commercial campgrounds might have. So one recommendation is like even having maybe like a kids, pump bike track or something there would be kind of neat. Something that wouldn't, cost a ton of money. Maybe eventually there'd be some kind of playground equipment, or we even thought big if you had a grant for like a splash pad or some kind of water feature. So that's another thing that the campground kind of lacks is, people like to always camp on water, near water, be able to swim. So maybe recommending, hey, you can go over to El Qual. I know it's not on site, we're not on a river or anything like that, but just recommending to people, to use local features. And then lastly, just, we want, I know Grant's done some work on the website or making it, easier for people to register, which is awesome and great. And then the last thing we really pushed was, well, I guess two things. One is just more marketing in general that's free, so like social media. When we looked at this campground online, I think I only found maybe 4 social media posts since it opened, and it was highlighting the opening. One was a TV6 post. Like the city website maybe posted a few times. But the big ones was like, Ramba posted about the campground and the Margie posted about the campground. So it was great to see like organic posts from other organizations. And then just even get, our group talked about even, Randy or somebody from the city getting on TV for free, getting and talking about the campground, like, hey, it's going to be opening up. And then there's lots of websites out there for car campers or other groups that we really need to promote outside of our area to get people to come here. It's not going to be as many Ishpeming residents saying like, hey, I want to camp here in my backyard. It's going to be people from Wisconsin, Lower Michigan, bikers. So any kind of mountain bike groups in Wisconsin or Lower Michigan that we can promote the campground to as an option.
Didn't we talk about making a couple bigger sites too for those that might have an RV? Yeah. Nice. Very good.
Some bigger, for the RV camp
Yeah.
sites, yeah. So there's going to be some easier access for RVs, which is great. And then we talked about having like a loyalty program with local businesses, where you could have like a coupon packet where you get, $2 off a pizza at Congress or $1 off your coffee at Velodrome. And then we want to see how that, how much of those coupons get used with the businesses and talk to business like, hey, was this good to get people from the campground into the city, spending money in the city, but also like, the people over at the campground feel good because they got discounts by camping locally as well. And kind of just getting surveys from people on what they want to see at the campground or nearby. So I'm not going to go through the whole report, but we'll definitely share it with the council so you can see some of those recommendations. And as I said, there's some long-term goals that would cost money, but I think if we got grant money, kind of like the solar project, could be beneficial. But there's a lot of things we can do for free to promote the campground as well. Is there anything else you thought to add at all?
How far is a water line from that campground?
Don't have the exact footage, but
Not very far, right? Across Mount Road.
yeah, it's probably, 600 feet maybe.
Oh, that close?
That's not,
Oh, but then you got,
yeah, 2 football
A
fields.
lot of garden hoses.
yeah,
I was thinking if it was close enough, maybe for the showers, but a little far.
put the showers on this side of
The
Mount Road.
wells would still work for the shower
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
I think we just did a estimate on running roughly 600 feet of storm sewer line. And I think that was about, what was it, $60,000 to $70,000. So we've thought about it, but for the campground, putting a water main there would be you could capitalize it on the water fund. but-
Eagle's not gonna let you have a dead end water main.
Yeah.
So you'd have to double that pipe because it'd have to have a loop.
Okay.
But those wells are functional and they're drinking water quality, so, driving another well for a shower would be probably more viable if we wanted a shower out there.
Could you put a holding tank instead of putting another well down? Could you have some kind of a holding tank?
And buckets. I'm not even kidding.
One thing you could do is a temporary tank,
Yeah.
so then it goes to medium temperature and it's not as cold out as well.
Yeah,
That's making a great example of what you guys need to talk about,
yeah.
and don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
You can do stuff like that, but then you become a different water supply. So you'd actually have to get a license for that. It would be regulated by Eagle. It's not just
Tell me you
simple.
only get the shower under the cover of darkness.
I'm just letting you guys know, there's more to it than just
Yeah.
all of a sudden tapping and using the water.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question, signage, I brought up with Amy, they have people that camp actually at the hub because there was no place else to go. If we were to put a no camping sign with directions saying quarter mile away is our city campsite. And if you get 4 or 5 people who don't park
I
there.
told Kurt we did that because there was no place to camp.
Right,
So we said
Right.
informally, council says, yeah, you wanna have 3, 4 people there, it's an all fire, we're okay with it, so we can revoke that, and then Kurt said, have you guys promote it down the road.
We could, for the price of a sign and a little direction, even if the city paid for it, you'll get it back in rental
Agreed.
Yep.
very quickly. And we have local sign people, taxpayers,
Yep.
so. Anyway,
Any questions on what Kevin talked about? And as he said, you'll get a copy in the mail.
I already got one, don't send me.
Yeah, you're good.
Is there,
Yeah.
He's got
anything else?
just the other
on
three.
the grass wire that you, council, questions, grass wire? Anything else from the commission on grass wire?
What?
Anything from you guys on brass wire, we can give it the check mark.
No, does anybody know when those signs will be out?
Bill or Kurt,
But what?
signs on highways.
Be built.
The guy has to come up here and do the site assessment, and then he's gotta get it approved by the highway. He said he's coming up in this direction in about, towards the middle of April. Middle of April, he'll do the assessment.
How about the 28th? That's done locally though, isn't it?
No, that's not,
Really?
it's not a local, you still have to go through the state. It
Okay.
still has to go through the street administrator of the city, so it's
Okay.
not just popping up signs. I can't even mow the grass on Division Street without getting authorization from the state. I can't dig on 28, I can't fix a guardrail on 28, I can't do anything on 28 without the state approving of it, so.
But the guy I talked to and you talked to, he'll help you get that M28 signage.
For a price, it's $360 per sign,
He told me it was free.
okay? We can talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, let's talk about elk wall improvements next.
Elko Lodge improvements. Well, I had met with Pat and Randy out at Elko Lodge so they could see the condition of it. And we need to do something with it.
I'm in complete
No, there
agreement
was-
with her.
There was, in the new capital improvement proposed for 2024, for public improvement, roof for lodge was 110,000, and for an ADA compliant bathroom was 50,000. And I see that is no longer in the budget.
Well, I get to be the bad guy, and I'm addressing council at the same time, but we need to put all of our ducks on Third Street, unfortunately. To keep with our bid once and to do it right, we're gonna have to pull every spare dollar we've got and put it up there. I don't know where the money you're talking about went, but I got a pretty good idea. If you look at the project cost we got, we're almost at, well, $1,178,000 that we have to come up with for Third Street, and we have to do it when we can do it.
Would we be able to bond at all for any of that Third Street stuff to
Well,
alleviate a little bit of money?
I think that that's already in the works if it's possible. Any additional grant money, bonding, whatever is already in the works, but I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers for us to bond something that we actually have the money for.
But what are, we- you
What I
know,
would recommend, Jason, is that the committee, and I talked with Randy about this briefly, the committee has the authority, and I think responsibility, to tell us what it would cost to repair the Elk Wall Lodge. Let's just leave the historic.
yes,
You know, we've gotta get a new roof put on, but a contractor should go look at it. When we were up there with Claudia, we noticed that the roof is this much higher than the original roof. If you go in and look inside, it's still the ridge poles and stuff from the original cabin. So at some point, they insulated and put a new roof on top.
You can see the insulation
Yeah.
because the eaves are down.
right.
So we need
In
to get
spots.
estimates from contractors, and the Parks and Rec Committee should come to council and say, here's what it costs to bring that cabin to 100%. Whatever 100% ends up being, and then council will direct our staff to start finding that money and start getting it in the budget. But for the next 2 years, it's all gonna be going into the ground.
Well, you can't continue to let that be opened and continue to,
No,
you
but the
know.
other part is temporary or permanent, low-cost fixes, eh? If a carpenter comes and says, well, we can cut out this, or the log repair people that you found, if they can come up and if it's gonna cost a few $100s to get them up here, and give us a good estimate, talk to Randy,
Okay,
have the chairman of the committee, talk to Randy, Randy can authorize it, that doesn't have to come to council.
But we still need to at least look at sealing the eaves and making sure that no further damage is
What's that gonna
done.
cost?
Well,
Can't answer you.
I know that, I'm just saying,
That's
we still
exactly
need to
my
look
point.
into that.
You guys got
But-
the power to do that. And if it's gonna cost some money, get a hold of Randy and spend the money.
But if we're spending every free dollar now, this is me asking a question on the budget. If we're spending every free dollar on Third Street, what else are we removing from this list to manage to do that?
I don't even know if that money was moved for this, so.
I can answer some questions on the capital improvement plan and the budget, if that would be appropriate.
That's kind of where I'm going with this, yes.
Okay, so, high level, 2024 capital improvement plan. Those numbers were placeholders for what myself and Mr. Cugini at the time identified as a need that we had, but were likely drastically very under budgeted as placeholders regardless anyways. The big thing that happened at the end of 2024, which really kind of put a damper on your public improvement fund hopes, was your Second Street storm sewer collapse. That was an astronomical cost that we realized at
Can you
the,
ballpark what that total ended up?
I can tell you exactly, it was $655,000 and some change. So, I mean, your primary source of that was public improvement fund. You have no revenue generating vessel which provides funds for stormwater in this town. So we had high hopes for what we were gonna do with the public improvement fund, and then we had to field an emergency. I mean, it took long enough for us to figure out the engineering, for us to form a game plan, moving as quickly as we could to get that road back open. It was certainly a priority for everybody at the time. So that's part of where your money got bumped. Looking at the public improvement fund balance as we're sitting right now, you've got about $1.2 million in your public improvement fund to execute. Leaving your skate park, the remaining storm sewer payment, because the contract language on that was just finalized. Your fire department asks for the year, your police department asks for the year, the cemetery GIS payment you guys just approved, all of your library asks for the year, and then there is a mandated debt service payment, which I need to transfer out of that fund, and I'm not gonna let you guys say otherwise, I'm sorry. That leaves us at $468K. So the good news here with public improvement is we have $468,000, and if you remember, Chris said we need to go at least to Michigan, that's $459K. So right off the bat, I can tell you with your public improvement fund, hopefully some good news. We can do enough storm sewer on Third Street to at least get that. Absolutely, we need this done. We can do that without bonding, and we can do that solely from the public improvement fund if my estimates hold.
Well, and contingency money, but also like, what about the Vector truck and stuff like that?
So the Vector truck was purchased from water and sewer funds, so we gotta look
Okay.
at under the funding source on that capital improvement plan, anything
Okay.
PIF is your public improvement fund, and you'll see the Vector truck is coming out of water and sewer revenue.
Okay.
But this is after the tennis court, money was reallocated into storm sewer. And what we talked about with the tennis courts, I think is an important point to talk about with the lodge is,
I want to interrupt you for
yeah,
1 second.
of course,
The tennis court funds
funds.
have been reallocated and they are included in the sewer funds now?
In the available public improvement fund, that 400, you only have 468 and not 168 because you reallocated your tennis court grant match. So that's the only reason we can field Third Street. So
How about the two that Claudia's talking about?
now those lodge, that's money that was rolled over and into that balance. So you basically have that balance at the expense of the lodge and at the expense of the tennis courts. But I think that the lodge is a really good parallel example, along with the tennis courts, of a problem that has been decades in the making. And right now,
Neglected, very badly.
for sure,
neglected,
exactly.
yes.
As a resident, I'm frustrated. I hate seeing a historic building, and so I can totally like feel the frustration, and I'm there with you. But when I have to put on my finance hat, I have to go, okay, this is not all of a sudden an emergency. This has been happening, and
Right.
we have this one-time project window. So I think that's kind of from the financial perspective, which is only one aspect, right? But that's where I'm coming from, and that's why your CIP plan looks like it does today. Just giving you some background on how I made the decisions or my recommendations. Some of them, decision to put on the plan or recommendation to council. Excuse my language, obviously council makes all decisions, but.
And I think one thing, though, that this council and even a lot of the previous council tried to do is develop more of a long-term solution. So, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we're kind of sitting here trying to play catch-up in a lot of different areas, things that may not have been planned for or even maybe thought of by past councils. So, I mean, we're kind of stuck with what we got, but.
It's a total shame, because I've been around, Claudia's been around, Mike's gone, but he's been around, and we all have to take part of the blame.
Yep,
And it goes back to, I'm gonna say the squeaky wheel, not the other word I was talking about, but the squeaky wheel has always got the grease. And that can't be, if you're on a city council and you have half of the people in town that voted for you, supporting you, you're doing really well.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you're not gonna make them all happy, and if you are, you're not doing your job.
I agree.
And I'm very happy to say this council and of the last few years has been turning that around. We've got a fantastic city manager now. We've got a great guy, and I hate him because he's always right, in Grant, that there's times when I say, no, I could do it for the roof. I could say, no, we gotta do it. No, he's right, and I have to be man enough to agree. We've gotta get the streets done. That's been neglected worse than anything. That's why we're so far into it. A city employee went to a committee meeting in Escanaba. Escanaba is working with $70 million in grant money, and they've got a strategic plan out to 2080, and we're at the cusp of starting.
Yeah.
But we have to get our big ones and our infrastructure, and we have a good start.
But and I think there's a lot of things that need to be considered, and when you consider the term infrastructure too, whether it's the roads or it's, what's beneath the roads, or it's our city facilities or what have you, everything in that scope,
Infrastructure
yeah.
to me is below the ground.
Oh, no, I've
No,
always,
what's infrastructure to you?
Underground facilities are the buildings.
yeah, I've always kind of learned that infrastructure is everything.
A building that has historic value should be in your hands. And we should respect your committee. That has not been there. And it's there now, I promise you, for the next year and a half, that you guys are gonna be respected, and when you come to us, you're not gonna be told, oh, great, that's nice. No, you'll be told, well, Grant will tell you, maybe next year we can do this, or we can put this in. But we have to face the hard facts right now. We've got to get as much of Third Street done as we can.
Well,
Have you guys explored getting a grant manager or hiring a grant manager for the city at all?
We have, I don't know if I should tell you this or not, but
Oh.
we have absolutely, and the manager has a plan that
Awesome.
we won't be releasing until the regular meeting. But we'll have some really good news at the regular meeting, all the way around
Awesome.
for the city. And the seriousness or I don't even know what word to use, but the seriousness of the things we have to do has to be prioritized. And right now, whether we like it or not, the crap under Third Street is what we gotta do.
I think triaging is the word we've been using.
And I think one thing, though, I want to add, it takes the entire council to appreciate the work of a committee, because for the last couple of years as mayor, I don't want it to sound like I wasn't friendly to the committees, because we need to
Oh, no, I'm
respect
not
them.
saying that. I'm saying as a whole council.
Yep.
And I don't think you've ever had, I never remember meeting with the Parks Committee.
No,
We met with
We'll continue to
one,
do this with
There-
all of our.
there was a DDA council, Parks and Rec, and you couldn't get a thing done because there was too many people.
I agree, yep.
And another thing that we have is we have somebody watching the money. And the DDA is getting to be a more lucrative
Yep,
member of our community's financing. And we got an awful lot going for us, but we're still doing a lot of catching up.
yeah.
So
But,
when it comes to the Alcoa Lodge, I think everybody here loves it.
yeah,
I think everybody agrees with the committee. And I think that, for lack of a better term, the ball's in your court to start getting the
I can-
plans for
yeah,
what
I
we're
would.
gonna have to do.
would now, would the Parks and Rec Committee be able to look at alternative funding sources like fundraising or stuff like that? I don't know the legalities on,
Nobody's gonna tell you you can't.
I just don't know the
Just you have to-
legalities.
If you get something going.
We have to have a cost of what.
Right, right.
Yes, and
If you get something going, like I said, talk to Randy, he'll give you the yea or nay. He doesn't have to come back to council for most of that stuff.
okay.
Caroline, is that something that we're legally allowed to do, is raise funds versus,
Talk to Randy.
or, well, I
You
was,
can get donations.
okay,
Anybody can give a donation.
okay.
Then you trying to get a word in his way.
Or even work out some
lodge down at the
strategic
Teal Lake,
partnerships with maybe.
Is that gonna be open this summer? I mean, how
Well, I
bad a
need
shape
a-
is it if we're not putting a dime into it?
CP regional labor.
It needs some repair, but this again is for you now.
When is our next Parks and Rec meeting? Do you know offhand?
Well, next
Monday
month.
before the council meeting,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, May,
April.
yeah, it'll be May,
Craig.
it's like mid-May, May 20th.
Teal Lake Lodge, just asking that, and, that's in pretty tough shape on the outside.
Isn't the deck falling apart?
Well, yeah.
Again, I don't like to keep raining on the parade, but that's for you
Yeah.
guys to look at.
Go down and take
A
a
lot
look.
of council discussion.
Was Teal Lake, Bill, is that the one that was gonna be the water authority was potentially taking over?
They're not gonna
Oh,
take it
they're
over.
not.
And just to clarify, I gotta talk for a sec. So Third Street it's not just Third Street. This is like the perfect storm of everything that could possibly happen, but the timing isn't right. So not only is Third Street gonna get done, but by doing the work that we're talking about, we're gonna be diverting almost 3/4 of the flow that normally ends up at the bottom of Third Street or Empire is now going to be diverted a different direction. So you have all those citizens down at the bottom that every single time we get one of these storms, I can't even think of the guy's name, but water is usually coming out of his windows. So we're doing that. We're trying to eliminate 2 aged storm lines that are going to fail. I can't tell you when, but they're going to fail. So we're trying to get rid of those by adding water to Lake Bancroft. And Pat, I mean, you've been working on Lake Bancroft revitalization for,
Forever.
yeah. So it's not just one little project, it's a bunch of little things that everything just kind of happened at once. And because we didn't have a really good strategic plan, now we're just like scrambling to try and get everything done at once because we're never going to dig up Third Street again. We're doing this right and we're going to do it right the first time.
Are we, though, risking any pollution into Lake Bancroft by doing that?
No.
Different subject.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
The other,
Mr. Early, I'm gonna point you to our Parks and Rec Commission.
I think,
Just a few minutes if you'd like
I
to speak.
tried getting him on there.
the other thing that I want
I
to,
was just about to say that,
We have a
we're bringing to our
vacancy.
board, but I think, we'd be on board to, build a pump track and,
Nice.
maybe a beginner's trail, for the campground.
Beautiful.
Wow,
You know the
thank
people
you.
to talk to. And I'm sorry, Bill, you
Yeah.
gotta finish?
the other thing is, Parks and Rec Foreman and I are still working with Great Lakes Sports Commission on the Master Lodge. Again, if you remember, they want to do a $3 million project, not buy us a piston bully or a gator. So we're still working on that part of getting a bigger lodge, Possibly incorporating some of the repairs into the roof of the Teal Lake Lodge. It's just, there's a lot of things going on right now that we're trying to play catch up with. We finally have somebody in the right driver's seat, and things are gonna start
We're gonna
happening.
build something else and we can't repair what we have.
You didn't say that.
But we are
The
still
other-
going
the
to
other
try and
thing to
repair what we
remember
have.
is, as you guys look at these projects, some of that stuff can be done. You know, some of these projects can be done as we move along. So, like I said, bring it, talk about it, look at it, get some numbers, come to the city manager, and some of this stuff we can get done. Anybody else wanna weigh in on alcohol?
I do. I just wanted to ask, who's in charge of the maintenance and watching over the damages on these buildings? As all qual, it's obviously been over a decade of leakage. It doesn't need a whole new roof from what I see. I've been in carpentry for almost 30 years. Whoever installed it at the bottom with the flashing and the installation of ice and water shield or whatever at the bottom of that valley, and then the apron in front of the dormer, that was all done wrong. It's probably been leaking since it's first installed. The major damage that's there now could have been avoided if this was done years ago.
I can comment on that. So the roof wasn't to try and keep the I wasn't here when it happened, but I can tell you that the roof wasn't done. You need ventilation. So the only way you're gonna get that is to raise that roof. So then you're gonna change the characteristics of that roof. And that's what we've been talking about. If we're gonna do it, then we have to plan on the ADA compliant bathroom, redo the whole entire roof. It's not one part of the roof that's leaking. It's the frost builds up so far up the roof that it starts leaking from the top and comes down. The icebergs are actually coming in between the roofs because you're not getting any ventilation whatsoever.
I know exactly what you're talking about,
The thing to
but
remember.
that was installed wrong. I mean, after all my experience, I could tell you right now it was installed wrong.
With your question as to who's responsible, we've got a huge management type organizational, action that's going on, be reporting more at the next regular council meeting. And there's a lot of responsibility that was never assigned to anybody. And that's part of the problem while we're here.
I mean, do we actually have a carpenter that's capable of fixing things like this,
Not
working
anymore,
for us?
but we used to have a city carpenter. I'm sure Bill has people that are qualified.
We do. The last 2 or 3 employees that we did hire come from a carpentry. One is a HVAC background. So even though they are HEOs, I can pull their talents. So yeah, we do have some kids. Randy just met him when we were doing his office, so.
And that's part of what I'm talking about
Yeah,
in the reorganization.
okay. Yeah,
We've got a lot of positive stuff that's gonna be happening.
yeah, it could have been a minimal cost to fix this if it would have been done a decade ago, rather than letting everything rot as is, and it's just gonna get worse and worse, obviously.
I don't know when that roof was added on to that. I have no clue.
That's the story of the city.
Yeah,
It is.
and that's why I'm here.
Craig,
Preventative maintenance.
I want to run something by you after this. so.
Okay.
All right, do we need to talk about the budget anymore, or have we beat that horse to death? Any questions from you guys?
Is there any money in the parks budget to do any minor repairs to
Good
that?
question.
Yes.
Thank you, how much?
At least $10.
I'm confident it's somewhere between $10 and $10.32. No, it's, I think about $10,000 is what you have for repairs and maintenance out of
Okay.
your budget there. I apologize, I should have come prepared with that information. I don't have it directly off the top of my
That's
head.
okay.
But there is money to do repairs and maintenance, and there is money for supplies in both parks maintenance, which is a department in your general fund, and alcohol. Not sure why they're 2 separate departments, but you have 2 departments with some supplies and O&M budgets, and then, of course, your DPW staff can flex and direct throughout the year. So if we decide we want to start doing some minor repairs and trying to move forward, there's
But we
money
need to
and
get-
flexibility to do so.
We need to get somebody in there, and I have no clue who somebody is.
So you've got some light at the end of the tunnel. You know, we're not closing the door.
Just not LED light.
You've got You've got some support from finance, and you've certainly got the city manager and city council support.
Okay.
So, again, thank you so much for what you're doing, pass that on to the rest of your committee. And hopefully we'll get together again when the buds are on the trees and we'll talk about what it's gonna take to bring it back into shape. The other thing that we can do is city staff can do some work. You know, don't ask first. Don't think, oh, that's too much, or if you find projects that you think can be done, get hold of the manager and see if we can get something going.
Yeah, we've talked at even our committee meetings about even trying to get different groups to like adopt a park, kind of like when you look at, Lake Bancroft, and the money that was raised there, and, it was amazing that they came together and brought that. So we talked about trying to do that as we replace old equipment in other parks or fundraising or things like that. So it's definitely something we'll talk about more.
We can talk to see if one of those groups would be willing to come in and,
That's actually what I'm gonna
Right, volunteer days,
talk to you
Yeah.
about.
Fix
I
it
have an
days
idea.
kind of thing.
yeah,
And all those things can be approved by the manager, it doesn't have to come to council,
okay.
so stuff like that, you can fast track it, so this.
You got a lot of power, Randy.
Yeah, that's
The
actually,
charter
I have an
says-
idea.
Not bad.
I have an idea. That's what I wanted to talk to you
All
about, a
right,
group.
any other questions for the committee? And you for council?
No, thanks.
All right, that takes care of all three of them, I need a motion to adjourn.
Support it.
Motion and support, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.